Even investment firms from 10 years ago, they would not believe that you can build significant companies out of Eastern Europe. We tend to be very focused on surviving rather than winning.
Right.
Yes, resilience is very important in building startups until it becomes toxic. In a weird way, the best founders are customer-centric and not VC-centric.
Welcome to Sweat, Tears and Equity, a podcast by Fortech Investments, where we discuss the untold truths of funding and funding startups. Our guests are founders, investors, and other players from the ecosystem who learn these valuable lessons the hard way. They share the things that they wish they knew earlier about the challenges that lie in this journey, the things that no one prepared them for, so you and other founders can navigate this bumpy road successfully. So welcome, Bogdan. I'm so happy that today you are with us in this episode. I think that for people, and especially for our audience, here locally, you don't need that much of a presentation, but still. We have with us today Bogdan, who is the GP of Underline Ventures, more than 10 years in venture capital, and also founder of one of the most important startup conferences here locally, How to Web. So again, welcome and thank you for joining our episode today.
Thank you for having me.
For my first question, I saw that you mentioned that you're influenced by Paul Graham's essays back in 2006-2007. And if you could write an essay that would influence the next generation of Eastern European founders, what would be its core message?
That's a very, very good question, which I'm actually thinking about. I think there are significant cultural differences between Eastern Europe and Western Europe and US. Because of our history, because of our recent history in the last 100 years, but also long-term history, we tend to be very focused on surviving rather than winning. And I think it would be relevant to write about that and understand that. And this is something that I have seen with some of the founders that we are working with at Underline, and also from past times. Too many times founders make plans for surviving and not for winning, and they don't really think about how to win big. They think about how to build something that sort of works and ball game is there. While if you talk to American founders, they have this cultural reflex to think in terms of absolute winning when they present their products and businesses, and they try to explain why whatever they are doing would be an absolute top worldwide killer for what they do. And most of the time, they are not actually able to deliver that, but that's the baseline from which they start.
Cool.
Yeah.
I guess that's somewhat embedded through education and through the, let's say, school system in the US, where personalized branding is really important.
I think it's ingrained in our culture. So it doesn't start with school. It starts with family.
Okay.
It doesn't start with what you learn at school. Nikita Stănescu has this line that's stuck in my memory: "We are what we remember of ourselves." And when Americans think about themselves, they think about, we invented democracy, we invented capitalism, we went first on the moon, We did all of these things, which like half of them are not even correct, right?
Thinking about Gris and gyros, right?
We we invented French fries. But it's fine. It's fine. Like because this is what they think about themselves. Then the next thing that you're gonna do is just be the next in, the next sentence. You have to sort of align it with that universe. Your next project, your next vision, your next idea. And I think it's also worth. I mean, we can also think that we are from the same line of people as I don't know, Brâncuș or Vuia or some others who have done amazing and great things. Feats. Yes.
Yeah, but it's not that school is the only layer that teaches you to trust yourself and to present yourself, and this is what the US knows really well, how to prepare their future, let's say, stars. It's also exactly what you said, remembering our, let's say, success precedents. Even if they're not startups, but we have great people and we can rely and we can actually grow on their shoulders and we can celebrate those people. And oftentimes we're not doing that.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I partially agree. There is a part of what you said that I don't agree with. So I agree in the sense that we don't do that. Even worse, we have identified as stars or whatever people from our history, which are like, especially from our history, which have a debatable actual historical impact, and we've enlarged them for aligning with all sorts of other, cultural, political movements and reasons, and so not only that, we haven't really focused on the ones that have made a difference. We are sort of focused on the wrong ones. That's one. But then when you say that the American school teaches you to present yourself, and that's the difference, I think the American school encourages you to think positively and to present yourself and go through this exercise many, many times. Although now with, let's say in the last decade, they haven't done that much, but that's a second.
It's another topic.
It's another topic. But that was their reflex, and that was their history. But this framework of thinking big and thinking in terms of a conqueror, of a hunter, not of a victim, it doesn't come only from school. You can exercise it there,
sure,
but it doesn't come only from
sure,
the school environment.
I totally agree. Although when you have that, let's say, education framework behind, sometimes it brings like a superficial thing, like a superficial energy. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, you look at our own founders with all that, that mindset that you were talking about, but you still can engage with some, let's say, positive things like resilience, because we are teaching ourselves how to cope.
Yeah.
And those things, they bring up something in us, which is good, like resilience. But I think if we add that layer of think big, and actually believe in yourself, we could be a good recipe for success, right?
Yes, resilience is very important in building startups until it becomes toxic.
Okay, cool. You've talked about revenge being a powerful motivator for founders.
Yes.
What's your personal revenge story with Underline Ventures, if any? I know I'm switching it a little bit on you, but I was really wondering because it is your inception. So I wanted to switch it on you a little bit now.
All right. No, it's fine. So I never planned to build my own venture company. That was not the point. I think that I have tried to adapt to the local industry in a number of circumstances, and I think that I have I have failed in the sense that I haven't been able to fully align with some of the opportunities that I have engaged with, and that's because some people, for example, did not believe you can build big companies out of Eastern Europe. Many, actually, many, even investment firms from 10 years ago, they would not believe that you can build significant companies out of Eastern Europe. Or some others believe that founders need to be schooled, they need to be taught, they need to be managed, which is again something that I absolutely do not believe in. So I think I've started, if anything, I started Underline because I just couldn't find the right setup where I could just implement the things that I thought were worth implementing. So, yeah, I think that is the revenge I can talk about.
Okay, thank you. I think it will not so naturally lead me to another question, but for people who are viewing this podcast, we need to remember that 10 years ago, I think you started Underline in
22,
right? But your experience with the ecosystem, and you saw it growing through How to Web.
Yes, of course.
I mean, you 10 years ago, it was a total different thing.
Yeah, it was nothing.
It was basically nothing. And this is what I wanted to say in terms of how investors viewed Romania. We could not, let's say, look at a lot of success track, let's say here. We didn't see a lot of build-up product company oriented. Maybe it was the not the early phase, but it was like the outsourcing profile that we had. And I think we still have it, but it's switching a little bit. We just needed to see the UI path. We needed to see the vector watch. We needed to see, I don't know now, Druid and Bible Chat, which is a consumer startup that is doing really well. So
Green Horse Games.
Yeah, we did not have those things. So I think in some respect, were they right to view us like that? And was it a challenge for you to change the mindset, maybe?
I don't think I managed to influence the mindset that much. People who draw conclusions only out of history, they miss to understand history in the making. So
well put.
It's very easy to think, Romania is going to be a great destination for technology after you have, a New York Stock Exchange listing. But if you really want to, figure things from, ahead of time, you should be there 5, 10, 15 years before that.
Sure.
And my personal experience with the, let's say, tech industry, ecosystem, whatever, it wasn't actually, an ecosystem back then. It was just a handful of founders. And my take was that the best founders from Romania were as good as the best founders from London. It was just that there were not that many.
Okay.
But venture is a game of outliers.
Sure.
So you can still, have a fair chance of finding some interesting founders, even in Romania, from time to time that you can work with. So I think that there was a long period of time where really good people had almost no opportunity to build stuff, almost none. Which I think it was pretty, dramatic for maybe an entire generation of really good founders. And then we started having, more international, getting more international interest. We started having a few local funds, and I don't think. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I don't think technology in Romania developed because we had some outstanding venture capitalists who came here and just advised extremely wisely the local founders. No, we just had access to capital, and when we had access to capital, like people started building bigger businesses because they could.
Sure.
But they could have done that a decade earlier. It's just that they didn't have access to capital. That was the only difference. So yeah, I mean that was a pretty hardcore period of time, I think, until 2017. And kudos to the investors who
I mean the first wave of investors.
Absolutely.
I think they were
and
superheroes.
And I was also part of them, right? But like kudos to that class of investors, because they believed in the local industry, they believed in the local founders, and they spend their time and took risks to build venture capital companies and attract capital and make this whole thing work. Yeah.
And it was a bet on talent, because you mentioned generation. I think the millennials and also Gen X.
I don't even know exactly the brackets, so just
So I guess millennials start from 1981. And until then, and there's also a gap between generations that's called Xennial, which is me. But anyway, these two generations, I think they were overloaded with talent. This is what I believe.
Yeah.
Looking at people around me, overloaded with talents. And I think it's not that it's a wasted talent, but it comes back to the fact that naturally we are talented people. We are creative.
Of course.
And what you guys did in creating the ecosystem is that encouraged, the first one to surface, the first one to come. So actually, I think it was huge that you guys came up and create that ecosystem, that work frame. So that was truly important. And again, I think I said it all, that this was done 10 years ago.
15, actually.
Actually, 15 years ago. I'm just anchoring myself, I guess, in How to Web and your presence over there. But
15 years ago. First How to Web, 2009.
My God.
Yeah.
Wow.
You would go to meetings and nobody would know what a startup is.
Who was showing up back then, I guess?
You would be surprised, but founders. Founders,
yes,
absolutely. The first How to Web had 450 attendees.
Wow.
And the vast majority of them were founders.
My God.
It's the same. It's still the same.
Okay. But yet, this brings me to my next question. I mean, we saw a lot of companies that grew, a lot of successful exits. What is your bet on the next, let's say, unicorn from Romania? I know it's a thing that everybody's talking about, but I just want to give you also some hints. We saw a lot of B2B software as a service companies. Where would you say that the surprise will come from? Let's not call it a unicorn, but let's just say it, the next surprise company that will come from Romania, that will attract interest from both customer perspective of using the solution that they will bring into the market, but also, let's say, international VCs and all the hype and all the buzz that a successful company generates.
So I'm just going to stick to public info.
Okay.
So we have right now in Romania 3 companies which were valued at their latest round above 150 million. And that's FlowX, Druid, and Fintech OS, right? That's pretty advanced towards a unicorn. And then apart from them, we have a new wave of companies who are doing all sorts of very different things. Because I mean, in the 10 years from now, the SaaS space might be, especially enterprise SaaS, I think will be a super crowded area, right? So I don't know how much delta you can still create there. Maybe you can on verticalized use cases, whatever, plus AI, but I don't think the next generation of unicorns it's gonna look very much like the previous one. I think it'll be, some of them will be super heavy on the technology side. Some of them may address more industrial or it's called, I'm trying to figure out an explanation, but it's called real tech. So technology for the real world, all right?
Okay.
So for the physical world.
Okay.
So that will be an interesting area to watch, and then you can just have like a surprise,
Okay.
that doesn't respect any of these rules or themes or yeah.
Let's say you're opening a new fund and you're not allowed, just for the sake of the game, to invest in software as a service, enterprise, B2B. What would your investment thesis be?
My investment thesis,
let's say for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, my investment thesis for a fund in Eastern Europe, it will still be great founders who are building something that, I think could be useful or can make a difference. So just because we don't have a high density of entrepreneurial talent, still, not technical talent, not sales talent, we have those. We have less entrepreneurial and innovation talent from my point of view. I would still go founders first.
Okay.
So then if I take a step a step back, and I would say, all right, so apart from that, what are some of your interesting topics that you would look at? I would look at what I just told you, like real tech, which means, I don't know, industrial tech, agri-tech, space tech, defense tech. I would look at synthetic bio. And if I would start a new fund, which I will do in a couple of years more, I may look more into quantum, which may come of age in the next decade.
Okay, quantum computing, right?
Yes.
Okay, super interesting.
So this would be, I don't know, largely 3 areas. And there are some other developments that are interesting, right? Like, I don't know, mixed reality. You see interesting developments in mixed reality, in both gaming headsets and portable headsets.
Anything on the blockchain space?
No. And I mean, now with Trump in the White House, the blockchain may get a revamp.
It actually got.
Yeah.
Let's say that the watch business just grew a little bit more because they need to spend the money, and also the auto dealer shops they also got a bump.
Yeah. So from this point of view, things will be picking up for blockchain, but there have been so many investments in blockchain that I think in the next year we're just gonna figure out if which are the use cases that actually work and get traction, and then you can think about the next generation of use cases that make sense.
Okay.
Maybe. I'm super curious to see more about how the DeFi space, for example, will perform, which I think it's potentially one of the most interesting applications for blockchain.
Super interesting. Cool. You mentioned that your bet before tech and before the business model is the founder.
Yes.
I mean, it's really important as well for our audience to define a little bit what is that type of sauce? What are those ingredients that actually make a founder investable? But not only investable, what makes a founder actually be successful, I guess. And how do you spot those? I don't want to put them into metrics because it's also a human thing, right? Beyond the template that you obviously use.
Sure. So
maybe you can quantify it in a recipe, in your own recipe. And
no, you can't.
You can't. At least
each of us is successful in his or her own way. You can't be, because we all have, different abilities, different backgrounds. I think if you look at the way people can be successful, it's just leveraging what they can do best. Let me give you a random example. There is a company in our portfolio who's building and again, I don't know if they'll be successful or not. So far, so good. They are building a data platform for greenhouses. Okay. Right? Which is like a pretty weird product. Like, who would think about, a data platform for greenhouses? And two of the founders were high school colleagues, and one of them worked at Oracle and he was selling database systems.
Okay.
The other one comes from a family of greenhouse builders. And then they started with this pet project of building a mini greenhouse in one of their homes in during the pandemic, the home of the now CEO of the company. And they figured out while doing that there is a big gap between the technology that this guy was used to from his experience with Oracle to whatever the other one was doing, being able to provide to Source in terms of equipment and technology. So that's a pretty unique experience. You can't have a recipe around that. You can always, as the famous Steve Jobs quote says, you can only connect the dots looking backward. Like, you can't plan for something like this. You can just observe.
Okay.
You can just try out things, observe, the potential opportunities and address them. But it's very difficult to plan this. I think it's important to expose yourself to new situations and leverage them. I think that's something that you can do programmatically somehow. So
still, what you've showcased through this example, it's something of a niche. Yeah, you need to understand it, but somehow it's embedded in the solution problem thing. Because basically they saw a potential somewhere. They were domain experts, if you look at the example, and that translates to a traditional model of success. But beyond that, when it comes to innovation and being a visionary, it surpasses the problem-solving thing. You actually need to put yourself in an empathic state and truly connect with the founder. I'm just wondering if it is the case and you say it that way, because visionary and bringing things new, coming up with the innovation doesn't always start from the problem solution thing. It sometimes taps into a space of behavior, of being super, super focused and doing a lot of research. Do you see these patterns happening, and do you think they represent type of a, let's say, type of a success ingredient formula that VCs and angel investors should look a little bit into?
I don't know. I would not be able to say what other investors should do.
Sure. I think
it's up to them. It's up to them. But what I have seen, and you asked me about people who believed in the Romanian technology space, and I told you why my vision was different than I thought. Then that the best founders here are equal to the best founders in London. This is just direct observation. And I think many of the founders, they end up building useful products just based on some, like being very observant and being empathic about the users that they interact with. So it's less about them having a grand vision and the user pulling that vision into their life. It's much more about observing the user and identifying the things that you can leverage from their behavior, from their needs, and building something bigger on top of that. Doing research, understanding the user, these are just absolutely
elementary, basic things that you.
I would not take them that for granted. I think they are super important.
Sure.
They're mandatory, and not everybody does them. So these are very relevant, but they also have to align with the interests of the user, with the needs of the user. And obviously sometimes, like in technology, technology maybe looks like a homogeneous space, but you have areas which are totally different than others. Like if you think about gaming, in gaming, what are these macro needs, which were the same as the one in that pyramid of human needs, right? So those are the same, and all games tap into them. So what you do there, you don't start with a specific observation. You just throw products on the market, and you try to identify those products if you have matched something or not, and just move to the next thing, right? If you do this in SaaS, you have to be much more specific because the cost of the product is way bigger. So you can't really play roulette in SaaS. So you have to be much more observant and start with the need. Well, there you can use the product to identify the need. But at the end of the day, it's sort of the same. Like you still have to identify the thing that you want to address and leverage to make that user happy.
Okay.
Or more successful in whatever they want.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's so different when it comes to B2B and let's say B2C.
Yeah.
There are different spaces.
Of course.
And once you told me something really, really cool outside of the podcast space, that they are super dual, especially in the B2C area. You either make it big, but oftentimes those type of products fail.
Yeah, it's a much more of a binary outcome.
It's a binary outcome
in B2C.
And that stuck a little bit with me because I was really thinking about it. And yeah, I know the story that a lot of people, we mentioned validation. This is why I'm trying to come up with this question. A lot of people are somewhat biased when they start building a product. Let's say you're skipping the validation thing, right? Because you know it will work because you're in love with the product, right? And then you're building features upon features, delaying rollout, coming up with a product that doesn't necessarily satisfy a need, but looks like a cool idea. I mean, I guess this is somewhat of a risk when you try to evaluate potential, and I think your input would be so valuable, also from the perspective of an investor, but also from the perspective of the builder. And when you build, I mean, what are those essential milestones that you need to look, and what is the mindset that you must have which is a non-negotiable when you're trying to build a product. In your, I don't mean theory, but yeah, I guess it could be a theory, but in your experience, because that's really valuable for us, so that we can learn to do those things before we just bring up another product on the shelf.
Unfortunately, the answer that I can give you, it's so simple and lame.
Please.
It's just super hard to implement it. The businesses that succeed are extremely customer-centric. Extremely customer-centric. The decisions that founders take are very much focused on the success of the customer for whatever that customer, whatever that success means for the customer or for the user. And if you want to see if you're on that road, you can just question your decisions. The things that I'm doing right now for my product, do I know if they're gonna make the customer more happy or not? How can I find that out? Has somebody told me that they would absolutely need this? If I'm putting this in a product, do I see usage of this feature? Has anybody requested this? I think there is so much work that is being done, because and it's disconnected to the customer needs many times, and this is why committees can't really innovate, because when you run a decision through a committee, I mean it becomes a political decision, so it's less of a customer-centric decision, and it's fine. That works. That is very useful sometimes. It's just not good for innovation. So that's my, if there is one thing that I look at, I think this is super important. And again, what does success mean? Success means, what we are discussing right now, it just says, if you focus on the customer and you're gonna build something useful. Something useful, it's not necessarily successful at scale. And this, so for example, you're working on a, product, and you can implement feature A or feature B. Obviously you can implement feature A and feature B, but giving a limited a set of resources, which is always the case, you have to choose between feature A and feature B, and you have to figure out which of these paths leads to a bigger outcome. Both are customer-centric, but not both of them lead to success. So you have to understand which one of them actually, takes you to a bigger vision, a bigger company, a bigger outcome. They still start with the customer. It's super hard to impose your vision on the customer. Sometimes engineers do this funny thing, so they start with a technology and they put it out there, and so you have an idea, that's your idea. Nobody asked for that solution. You solve a technical problem, and then you put that technology in the hands of the customer, and you start seeing how the customer is using it. So that's in the first phase, you're just scratching your own itch. In the second phase, you have to be, again, observant and customer-centric and figure out how are they, for what are they actually needing that technology, which may be very different than what you thought previously. And then, the third stage, you have to figure out of all those possibilities that you have identified, which ones leads to the best outcome.
Super valuable. And also the example, the double feature example is super on point because it's such an often case where
Of course.
where you get to that point. So customer-centric, it's always about the customer, and I think we need to remember that. And in terms of what's truly important when you build up is to do the, let's say, ABCs, validation and all that, the timeline, and look for the best, which is more of a, I don't know, human thing than a template or a milestone. When I listen to your advices, I'm really wondering about what does the underlying, let's say, support system for founders look like, and how active are you as a general partner, maybe alongside your LPs or not, in supporting portfolio companies that you are investing in, and how does that look in your schedule?
I mean, my schedule is pretty packed.
I know.
But those are the joys of solo GP. I hope I won't be a solo GP for the next fund. We'll see. It depends on the stage of the business. We address very differently pre-seed or pre-product market fit deals than post-product market fit deals. I've been a moderately successful founder, 10, 15 years ago, and I have only been my experience from an operational point of view has been more connected to building products rather than scaling them. So when it comes to, I don't know, hiring your first 10 SDRs, I don't know nothing about that, honestly. I mean, you have to work with somebody else. But if it comes to, just like building your initial MVP, figuring out what works, what does, and building the initial team, then we can be pretty hands-on, and as hands-on as the founders want. So at pre-seed stage, pre-product market fit, we tend to work more with the founders. And then at seed stage, we just try to amplify your initial successful data points and not stand in the way, because that's also an important thing to do, to know when you have to move over, because that's less of a, you can make less of an impact. Okay. So we work on strategy. We help founders. We have somebody who is hired full time for doing hiring in our team. Adriana is super helpful with all things community, communication, launching products for the ones that are more advanced, employer branding, all sorts of stuff. Cool. And then we have a few venture partners who are helping us with advice on go-to-market and other more specific granular operational stuff. And then we have a larger platform with just, a lot of people that we can connect founders with for more specific questions, including our LPs. I don't know, very, very granular stuff. You don't know how to split your ESOP or stuff like that.
Okay, so we got to the end of our episode today, but there's one question that I want to ask you, because you've been in countless pitch meetings. I would love to know what's the most, let's say, memorable, crazy founder behavior you've witnessed.
Crazy?
Yeah.
In a good way or in a bad way?
It's your, you can choose.
I mean, I don't want to ever talk badly about founders.
Obviously, we're not naming names. It's just,
not even by giving examples. I think sometimes founders are when you decide that you want to start a startup, you usually don't do that because it's easy. You usually do that because you know it's hard, but you think you're gonna pull it through, and you gather all that courage and strength, and sometimes and you start doing whatever you're doing because you believe very strongly in what you do. And sometimes you do meetings with founders who you feel that they sort of, like, obviously you ask questions and you try to figure out what they are doing, and they sort of lose patience with you. and you get into this position where you talk to a founder and you think that he's thinking, isn't this guy getting it? Like, this is so obvious for me. I've put my life on the line to make this work. Why isn't he really figuring it out? and in a way, sometimes these founders who have super strong belief in what they do, if they manage to also align that with just being observant and customer-centric and all the other things that we've discussed about, some of them are the best founders. Like, in a weird way, the best founders are customer-centric and not VC-centric. I think, but not self-centric.
Okay, sure.
Right?
Because that's a danger.
So if you just believe in your ideas, that doesn't actually, most of the time that doesn't actually work. So yeah, I think I sometimes get into those conversations, and I understand them. I understand the context.
I didn't promise. I said only one question, but I think I still have two more. There will be short questions. You
can cut some of the less interesting ones.
Yeah, I already did that because I know it won't be enough time. But we've talked about founders. I was also wondering about LPs and profile. Mm-hmm. And when you set up a fund, of course, that's important. Could you I don't want to generalize, but we talked about archetypes in terms of founders. Can we talk about archetypes in terms of LPs here locally in Romania?
Sure. I mean, when I started Underline, so how did I start at Underline? George from Greenhorse Games, who was my first investment when I was working at 3TS, called me one day and told me that he is selling his company or part of his company, and he wants to give me some money to invest. And I thought he was nuts, so I didn't act upon that for months. And at some point, I was pushed by Vlad Ionescu, who is my venture partner and ex head of growth from UiPath. And initially I wanted to add more GPs. I just wanted to add more people to the team. I think it's super important to have a cohesive team in the beginning when you start a fund. At all levels, not only at the GP level, but at all levels. So I made a very short list of people that I wanted to invite as GPs, and I talked to all of them, and none of them was interested to join me. They just had some other stuff to do, which is totally understandable. And again, it was a short list. So I thought, I'm not going to make any compromises. I'm just going to start Underline as a solo GP. I was 95% sure that this is not going to work. I'm not going to get anywhere. And because I was a solo GP, it was out of the question to raise money from European investors, like institutional investors, like EIF, IFC, BRD, etc., which are, totally okay as investors. They just don't finance solo GPs, and I wasn't also interested to make any compromises. So I have discovered that there is a class of LPs that don't want to co-invest with these investors, and I was the best choice for them. So if you talk about archetypes of LPs, locally, I've managed to raise a lot of money from founders, from the technology space mostly, but also from outside of the technology space, who thought that it's really cool that somebody is not doing a fund with EIF money. And for them, that was a differentiator.
Sure.
So I think that by accident, I have figured out that there is an archetype in when it comes to investor in funds that is mostly first money generation, first generation money.
Yeah.
So money that were created by that individual who are super entrepreneurial. They are not risk averse, and they just want to, see if they can win big, and they are fine. Like they think this will be this type of setup is pretty good for winning. And then you have the slightly more conservative money that are more excited by working with European money. And then obviously you have the institutionals. And then another category of investors that I've worked with and I've raised from are European family offices and fund of funds who look to Eastern Europe from the outside. So they have a lot of money invested in Western Europe. Maybe they have money invested in US-based funds. And Eastern Europe is this, wild child. And you want exactly you want to have like 5% exposure to something absolutely unknown that you haven't touched, and Underline was a good partner for them.
But I think the mindset has changed, right, from like what you've told us about 14 years ago. I think they see the potential here locally.
Yes, I mean, it's weird, but sometimes you meet people in Western Europe who are more optimistic about what's happening here than people who live here. It's super weird.
And it's so...
even like people from those people say, wow, you live in a city with, New York Stock Exchange listed company. Like how many other capitals from Europe you have in the same category? I'm going to tell you, not all of them. Most of them don't have a success story like that. And apart from UiPath, you also have Bitdefender and eMag and these up and comers that we discussed. So it's quite a broad space.
Cool. And I'm so happy that in our ending, this is the message that you are giving out, and this is so great. And I salute it. So yeah, I think Romania plays an important role, and it's getting more and more important. And you are participating actively in that in that outcome. And thank you so much, Bogdan, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.